Perhaps you can start this off.
So some of the conversations that I've found the most helpful in my learning process is hearing what other people have screwed up. Not only like what they've screwed up, but really how they've learned from it and like what the cost was, and how they plan not to screw up in the future.
Don't look at me.
So, but this is actually, the problem with these conversations is that you usually need to either be 3 beers deep, or you need to be in a really great relationship with people. You have to really trust them. So here's a lighter weight question. If you could write yourself from 3 years, if you could write yourself 3 years ago a note, what would you tell yourself?
Okay, I have to do the math first. Okay, I have to do the math.
And I think it's interesting because like we've all, everyone up here has been practicing for a while. So I'm not asking you to send yourself 10 years ago a note because, 10 years ago a note might be this entire presentation. But it's really interesting to see how we're continually learning. So 3 years ago.
Yeah, I guess if I had to write myself 3 years ago, I would say, calm the fuck down. Yeah, calm the fuck down and don't stress out as much as you are stressing out. Get some sleep. The problems that you think are huge are not as big when you wake up the next day.
Yeah, I would write probably more or less the same to myself. Maybe adding a little haters gonna hate. Something like that.
No, agreeing, that was a good one. I mean, calm the fuck down. I would do that as well.
You take that one?
Oh, I'd say, hey, honey. And I would say, I think your failures aren't really failures. Well, I'll get into that when I get a question later on.
Can you elaborate
But
yesterday?
I failed so
Can
much.
you continue what we discussed yesterday? Why failure? Because failure seems to be a buzzword here. That seems to fail fast and learn quickly, right? So tell us more about.
So you
your
and I
perspective
talked
on
about
failure.
it when you drove me and
Yes.
Clara to the hotel yesterday.
Yes.
And
From the
for
airport.
me, exactly from the airport. Where else? Thank you for clearing that up. I think in the way we work at Doberman, we use service design methods, and they're in. Stop laughing. It's not that funny. So we use service design methods, and they're inherently based upon testing, and iterating, as everyone has spoken about. It's methods we've been using for years, and so it comes so natural for me to not see testing as failure because I'm not striving for perfection in the first iteration. So we do ideas, and we use the same type of methods when working closely with clients. They don't escape anything. It's just you work with us, we don't work for you. And we come up with prototypes and hypotheses that we test, both lo-fi and hi-fi. And we've had rough wake-up calls, just especially with working with kids. We've done so much designing for kids, and we've learned enormous amounts from kids in working with adults. So I told you about a project we did with the Swedish public service radio, and they have this children's character called the Radio Monkey, and they have online huge amounts of material, and they wanted to do an app, and we were supposed to scale it down and do a concept, and we had this amazing idea of a fart piano, and down the low notes were like, and the high ones were really high-pitched farts, more like, and we had so many hours of fun involving alcohol. And we were at a daycare center or several other daycare centers doing the whole project, like every other week, sometimes multiple times a week, testing and trying out the prototypes. And they just rejected it straight off the bat. They were like, this isn't they don't care so much about your feelings. So they were like, do you have anything else? No? And we were gutted because we felt like this is our hero feature. This is the bang idea of the app. And obviously it wasn't. So now we're doing a new release of the app where we put it into a context. This is a spoiler alert, so don't say anything, especially for you. But where like birds are on a branch and you feed them and then you push their stomach and then they poop and explode. So much more fun, obviously. And so for me, the point of the whole process isn't succeeding and winning. So failure is just, the definition of a failure needs to change, I think. Because I think it was you said that true failure is when you do something repeatedly, and if you don't learn from your mistakes and you just are lazy and you're sloppy and disrespectful of your clients, that's a big failure. And I haven't done that many of those, more of the good kind.
Great, thank you. Maybe go a round table of most embarrassing failures, professionals.
Now that we're all friends.
And what you learned from it.
Well, I don't know. It just, I mean, working with kids is kind of fun because, I mean, I remember way back we worked on bicycle design products, real physical products, not software products, right? And we proposed this like in a focus group kind of thing. You know, this, look at this Lego-colored bike. Wouldn't you like that? No, I want like a gun metal gray bike like my dad, right? I mean, that was like almost like by coincidence, you know, we avoided that mistake, right? So going back to your, I mean, Melissa, the book at Catmull, right? I mean, we're in the business of planning, and what we're planning for is the unknown, basically, right? There's so much, you know, like coincidence and randomness and all this, and I mean, it's I don't know, I'm not answering the questions, but embarrassing moments, I guess, maybe that is when you don't realize, I mean, calm the fuck down, right, that a lot of this can't be planned for. I mean, you put everything into Gantt charts and stuff, just like it's waste of time very often, right? Intuition sometimes works better, sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember one time, some time ago, I prefer to talk about old mistakes, less hurting than your new mistakes. I worked with a client, and continuously I overstepped some deadlines that he put up. But I thought that what we delivered was awesome. So I said, wait another day and it will be great. And we delivered awesome stuff to that client. And he was continuously unhappy. And I thought, what an ass. It's such a great work, and all I get is unthankfulness. He said on the telephone, I would really like to know, Mr. Robert Stulle, what you think that project management is, because I'm not getting it. And in the end, I realized, like a year later, I realized that having great things was not his priorities. His priority was when I said you have something you receive something on Thursday evening, it would be there on Thursday evening. He was just a completely different person than I am, and I did not understand that.
So many embarrassing failures. Let me see. I'll one that I will live with to my grave is when I was CEO at Hot Studio, and I was at the TED conference, and this request came in for Hot Studio to pitch Francis Ford Coppola's winery redesign, like all his wineries. And I was in the conference, and I had given my creative director, I said, we got to do this pitch, and I'm at this conference, and you need to prepare for it, and we'll put it together, but I really want you to study the competition, how they would stand out, and to actually, in the pitch, really talk about the opportunity. He was like, no problem. And you know where this is going? Oh. Yeah, so we come back from the conference, and this is a pretty big gig, right? And I didn't do my homework because I assumed the creative director did, and went to the pitch, and just like flailing. You ever go into a pitch and you see somebody just dying in front of you? You just want to save them. Well, I I think I put the body under the water and they suffocated when I stepped in, because I was completely uninformed about the problem space. And I even mispronounced Francis Ford Coppola, calling him Mr. Coppola. I was like, and he's like, yeah. And he's like, it's Coppola. And I'm like, we are so not getting this job. And I just remember I couldn't wait to get out of that pitch, because I knew that I wasn't prepared and I didn't give my creative director enough direction to be prepared for such a big pitch. So I live with that one, and hopefully I won't run into him on the street, because I'm really still embarrassed.
If it makes you feel any better, I once photoshopped out his belly hair.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. Anyway. So my most embarrassing story at the startup with the harrowing commute. So it was a customer loyalty startup, and we printed cards, NFC cards, and NFC keychains that would sit at the countertop of the small businesses that used our product. And we were engaging in some marketing and branding changes, and in particular, we were introducing a new color palette. And so we were about to put in the biggest order of these key fobs, frickin' key fobs, that we had ever made. And as a startup, when you place like a $1 million order for key fobs, that's a lot of money. That's a big sunk cost. And the CMO is freaking out about the shade of orange. Like, he's really worried about the shade of orange. So we get a sample of these key fobs. We get 5 different samples where we're testing out different Pantone swatches on the text on the back of the card, so that the CMO will feel good about this branding change. And because he didn't feel comfortable with his own judgment about color, we actually put them in the kitchen and attached them to a voting sheet where everyone in the company, including the janitor, could come and vote on which color of orange they felt was best. So at this point, everyone in the company has looked at this key fob and carefully evaluated the color of orange. So we pick a color based on the voting, and the key fob comes in from China, big boxes, hundreds of boxes, because it's like literally over 1 million of these freaking keychains. And I take one out, and there's a typo.
I knew it. I knew it.
There is a typo. It says, earn ponts,
Oh, no.
not points.
Oh,
How do you get out of that?
You don't.
no. Yes.
What you do is you print yourself a dunce cap, and you put it over your desk, and it says, check for ponts. As an object lesson to both yourself, to not get lost in the details and remember that you're still creating a total piece of work. Yes. I actually heard one of the developers talking to one of the other developers, and like, okay, so do you have any ponts in that? So I think it actually, I like to think that, and I have another point about this actually, I like to think that it did help other people get better at quality control, but the reality is that it got me better at quality control. The other thing, to your point of calm the fuck down, so I was talking to someone who was like, "Oh yeah, I saw your company. I saw it at the coffee shop that I went to yesterday. I picked up one of the key fobs." I'm like, "Oh, the key fobs." And he's like, "What?" And I'm like, "You didn't see the thing on the back?" And he's like, "What thing on the back?" "There's text on the back." And he goes, "There is?" So, calm the fuck down.
It's going to be your mantra for the next conference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's calm the
UX
fuck down.
Salon, calm the fuck down.
Good, Brendan.
I
Yes.
love it.
From your incredibly foul-mouthed Americans.
Yes.
Have you ever found vulnerability useful?
Yeah, I think it's a key ingredient in being a leader, is to show your own humanity, talk about your mistakes, your ponts that you make, and just being vulnerable is really important. Actually, I think since I always like to say Facebook is my ex-boyfriend, ex-girlfriend. One of the things that I've really enjoying watching at Facebook over the last couple of years is to watch how vulnerable Mark Zuckerberg and Sheryl Sandberg are becoming publicly. And Sheryl Sandberg, of course, her husband died tragically several months ago, and she sort of exposed her pain and agony and shared it with the rest of the world. And it has made her much more accessible. People really understand her, and it enables us to recognize our own sense of humanity. And also Mark Zuckerberg, he's got, his wife's got a bun in the oven. He talks, how he's looking forward to being a dad. When you see that, and I of course talked about Carl, you want to work for people like that, and so I think being vulnerable is probably one of your most important attributes when you're a leader.
I totally agree.
Yeah, I agree too. It's, again, going back to where I come from in Scandinavia, and you might talk to this a bit as well. I mean, the RCO in Norway, he put it this way, about like vulnerability. He said that, all men in Norway, I mean, we're getting feminized. And that's kind of fun, and then they kind of compensate by going outdoor and free climbing and all this stuff. But they are we're a very kind of, women and men where I come from, it's kind of same, right? So empathetic, vulnerable. Then you go to Spain to the office. That's a lot of machos, right? So I don't know. But it is important to show your, vulnerability.
Anyone else? No? So I think at Doberman, for me, what was striking when I started there is vulnerability is part of almost the business model. It's what if we didn't have it, we wouldn't stay afloat, because we have to have vulnerability to enable trust. And it is as common as like giving someone else a cup of coffee. It could just be like, you know what, I'm fighting with my boyfriend. This is not a good day for me. And it could be like, okay, can I help you with anything? Or just knowing that Avi is not in that mood today, or he needs to not be in the center of attention, or actually lifting something off of someone else's shoulders. And I think we were quite outspoken about it, and so we recruit people who can accept that culture, because I think you couldn't really live at Doberman and work there unless you were comfortable with sharing personal stuff about yourself and accepting that others are personal with you. Of course, you draw the line wherever you want to, but we are vulnerable in front of our clients or customers as well.
Because you can't ask for someone's trust. You got to be vulnerable and trust him first, and then perhaps, again, coming back to the trust issue, then perhaps he would trust you back. So I want to end this session. Thank you. We're running out of time. And we'll take a 30-minute break, and we'll come back for the last session. So thank you all. Thank you. Thank you, Melissa.